shoot your shot. Shoot your damn shot in any area of life, right? Like, there's some, hot person you want to take on a date. Go shoot your fucking shot, right? Worst thing that happens is they say no. You're in the same position that you were before. You got to get over that fear of rejection.
Hey guys, welcome back to Rave Culture Cast, your weekly guide to the EDM community, music festivals, and more. I'm your host, Emma Capotis. Happy Wednesday, fam. Welcome to a new episode. I hope you guys are all doing well. I don't know about you, but I had a lot of FOMO from Coachella. I know this is like 2 weeks ahead by the time you guys are listening, but damn, anybody else have FOMO? Because that looked so cool, and I feel like the electronic music scene this year was absolutely thriving with the new, I think it was the Kassar stage, like Perfection, the Doolab, the Yuma, everything. It looked absolutely amazing. And yeah, that's definitely on the bucket list for me after this weekend. Also, we just had our 5-year anniversary, guys. I didn't say it in the last episode, but just came up in Facebook memories, and I just had to take a second to say thank you so much to you guys for being here and for supporting Rave Culture Cast all these years. Like, 5 years flew by, but it also feels so long too. It's like kind of crazy, but I'm just so proud of this podcast and like all the topics that I've been able to cover, all the guests I've been able to have come on and interview, and we're going through a lot of growth and expansion this year, which is exciting. So it's kind of cool to just start this whole new chapter with, having new interviewers. We're kicking off our contributor program for our social media accounts. So you guys are going to see so many new creators' faces creating content for Rave Culture Cast just to keep pushing this community forward and like really being a better representation of rave culture and all the people in it. And yeah, I mean, it's always just been my mission to make this like a really positive, inclusive space where we can just talk about the things that, we love and share our passion for this community and why it's such a beautiful thing to be a part of, while also educating you guys. So very exciting, but I just had to say happy 5-year anniversary, Rave Culture Cast. But before we dive into today's interview, you guys can connect with us at Rave Culture Cast on all of the platforms. Everything will be linked down below. And the last announcement I have for you guys related to EDC Las Vegas. So I am going this year. I cannot fucking wait. It's going to be absolutely amazing. But I have been working on something behind the scenes that is a brand new experience for me personally and for you guys. So I am going to be hosting a meetup this year, but it's going to be before the festival because I am working the festival and I'm going to be running around like a freaking crazy person. So like, I just was like, it's going to be too crazy for me to do something at the festival because I don't know my time like commitments yet. So I'm going to be doing a meetup on Friday at 11 a.m. It's like an official like meet and greet situation, hosted by iHeartRaves at their Luxe pop-up shop, which is really fucking cool. I'm very like honored that they, asked me to do this. So 11 a.m. Friday at the Luxe pop-up shop. It's in the Luxor. Come out, say hi, please. I'm going to be hanging out there for a while. So pop in, let's hang out. I was like, this kind of works out way better because we'll all be refreshed. There's more time. It's not the craziness of EDC, like noisiness in the background. Like we can actually like chat and hang out. So yeah, please stop by and say hi. Again, that's gonna be Friday, 11 a.m. Luxe pop-up shop. That'll be the only like official like meetup I'm gonna do like throughout EDC weekend. Otherwise, I will see you guys at the festival. All right, with all that being said, let's get into today's guest. I'm so excited. This was such a valuable episode, like so many good tips and tricks for you guys. This is a lot about mindset today. I'm joined by Nik Cherwink, who is your DJ's favorite life coach. He has an amazing career in the music industry, and he really, really like followed, gut feelings and finding a way to get to his purpose. And he worked his way up in the music industry. He started at Capitol Records. He's worked with artists as an artist manager. Then he worked for Icon Collective, and he was, like molding the minds of the future producers and DJs of the world and superstars. He's worked with amazing brands in this space. And now he has his own coaching business where he literally coaches like some of the biggest artists in dance music. And he has his own podcast, the Headliner Mindset Podcast. So I'm going to get into Nik's interview. He's absolutely incredible. Like I said, so many just good like nuggets and tips and information. I think you're going to leave this episode feeling like very pumped up and motivated by him. So, check out all his socials, link down below. Check out his podcast. I was just a guest on the Headliner Mindset podcast as well. So we did a little podcast swap. But let's just dive into the episode. Please welcome to the podcast, Nik Cherwink. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I've got a long intro here, so everybody strap in. Today we have an absolute legend on the podcast, Nik Cherwink, aka your favorite DJ's life coach, who has worked his way up through the music industry, working everywhere from Capitol Records to doing artist management to a life-changing role as an industry advisor at Icon Collective. Nik has helped develop some of the best brands and artists in the business, which led him to create his own coaching business. And he's a podcast host as well of the Headliner Mindset podcast. So today we're going to talk about Nik's career, how he's navigated all of that, made major mindset shifts to get to a place where he's able to give back to others and then pursue his own passions in the music industry. So with all that being said, welcome to the podcast, Nik.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
I'm excited to have you. We're doing a podcast swap. So I think ours is coming out first, I think. But yeah, I'm on Nik's podcast, which is really cool. And then this time we're reversing the rules. So
yeah,
everybody
go check that out. That's coming out Monday. I don't know when y'all
Beautiful.
are listening to this, but it is going to be out by the time you're listening to this. And it is fire. Emma is
Amazing.
The shit, as you already know. So if you want to hear me dig into her story, go check that one out.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. We'll have that link below. And just some backstory for you guys too. So like Nik and I connected recently, but it was one of those things where we just had a bunch of mutuals and his like name. I found his podcast first through his podcast clips and then like just heard about him through a bunch of mutuals. And we were like, okay, we have to have a conversation. Got to meet him in Austin in person when I was there, a couple weeks back. And now that I know everything about him, his like career and everything is so crazy. So that's why I'm pumped to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Hell yeah. Okay, I want to dive into your background a little bit. So let's talk about your musical story first and foremost, because obviously like we know you are super, super passionate about what you do, but I'm kind of curious like where that began and like what genres you were into growing up. Like what was the music that really like shaped you to kickstart this whole journey?
Yeah, totally. I've always had music in my blood. I come from musical parents. My mom was an African dance teacher and my dad played like Indian music and stuff. So I just grew up in a very musical household. And I was an artist myself for a long time. Drums were my first instrument, but I also played guitar. In high school, I was rapping. We were making beats. Like I was always very much an artist and started going to shows at like 12 years old. My dad would drop us off at like the venue in San Francisco and we go into punk rock shows. So I was always a big rocker and I still am. It was like grew up on classic rock and then it got into more like alternative and then punk. And then I was a huge metalhead and I still am a huge metalhead. But also discovered electronic music along the way too, so I just love everything. Like I'm a music person and definitely at my core, like I grew up, really being an artist, which, is a big part of like why I do what I do now. I don't necessarily really like consider myself an artist so much these days, but like I have a foundation in, playing a lot of music and going to a lot of shows. So it's in my blood deeply.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, it's good because you have like the experiences yourself and then as a fan on the other side of things as well. And we talked a little bit about you being like an OG raver, but can you tell me about those like first few shows that you went to?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. This is the rave culture cast. Yeah. So let's talk about the raver. It's cool because I graduated college in 2007. So I moved to LA in 2008. And I moved to LA to, I was like fresh out of college and I was just like, hey, like I want to work in the music business. I want to like chase this wild dream of working in the music business. So moved to LA at a really cool time because 2008, like EDM wasn't a word. That wasn't a word that was coined yet. That wasn't a term that was coined yet. Like dance music was still very underground. It was like they had like techno or like what was called techno really was trance, but like everyone just called it techno music, and so living in LA at that time, I was saying, I was always a big metalhead, but I don't know how. I just started listening to electronic music like Tiesto. I don't know if he still has it, but he used to have Tiesto's Club Life, and it was like on Apple. It was like an Apple, like basically every morning I'd go to work and my computer, as soon as I would launch it, it would automatically download Tiesto's Club Life into my Apple Music.
Amazing.
So I just started listening to that. And then the first show, I remember I was like walking was working in Hollywood, and I saw a flyer on the ground, and it, like back when people would just like, just there'd be flyers all over the parking lot, all over cars and stuff. And I remember seeing it was Armin van Buuren was on the flyer, and I was like, oh, like I keep hearing this guy on like Tiesto's Club Life. It was really trance music was what I was into. And so the first show I went to, it was Monster Massive 2009. It was this big Halloween show, and yeah, just first time like seeing all of it. I dragged my roommate out. I was like, hey dude, like we got to go to this thing. And he was a rocker too. He's like, you want to go to a rave? You want to go like, what is this shit? And it was so funny. It's so cool. Like dragging my best friend out too, because it just completely changed our lives. We walked into this magical wonderland world, with just like, whoa, what is this place? People are coming up and hugging us and giving us candy, and they're like, this is your first rave, like, oh my god, like welcome to the Narnia, and it was fucking life changing, right? As I'm sure so many people can resonate with that same story. But also, like, it was cool because this was still underground. It was right before this wave really came through. Like, I really saw it as it was kind of like 2010 was when electronic music really started breaking came over from Europe, and it was just this magical moment. So we like just caught the wave, and it was fun,
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's so funny because when I think about that, this is where I get woo-woo, but I'm like, the fact that you just saw a flyer in front of you. I mean, at the timing of it, you were already listening to it as well, so it's probably bound to happen. But like the decision to actually go, how that like changed the trajectory of your life is like the little things that I think about sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's just like the decisions we make affect everything we do. So it's crazy that you did that.
And that's what I would call a call to adventure, right? It was this little sign, and there's these calls to adventure all the time, all these little nudges from the universe, all these little things, all these little invitations. How many of them are you saying yes to?
Right.
What if I didn't say yes to that? Right? Where would my life be? Right? What if you didn't say yes to that call to adventure? What if you didn't say yes to that opportunity or that invitation? A lot of times we're just, we like to stay in our little, familiar kind of safe zone. But there's so many opportunities in all these different areas of life where it's just like saying yes to the adventure of life that is just constantly presenting itself to you. It takes a little bit of courage, but it's life-changing.
It's amazing. Guys, there's going to be so much value in this episode. Nick is about to pop off. I'm so excited for this. Okay. I love talking to a coach, though, because it's cool. Yeah, you work with so many people, and you deal with like so many different, types of personalities and issues and things that people are going with. So I'm excited for you to dive in. But I did want to talk. Okay, so then when it comes to going to school to get a degree, I was just checking out your profile, and you ended up going to business school originally, and you wrote that you felt like it was taking the safe route instead of maybe pursuing a career in music or something like that, or as a musician yourself. So why did you make that decision to go to business school?
Yeah. And this is a big part of my story. I didn't go to business school, but I just went to like a 4-year college, but I majored in business.
Got it. Okay.
But when I was in high school, and I was an artist at that time, I was like, all I care about is playing drums, playing guitar, making music. I was in a band. Like I played music like 6-7 hours a day, right? I loved it. And then all of a sudden, like it was like my junior year, and I'm looking ahead, I'm like, I got a year left, and like, what am I going to do after that? And for me, like, I grew up in a, kind of like other side of the tracks, kind of ghetto, broken home situation. And I was like, I can't stay here. I got to get the fuck out of here. Like, I got to get out of town. And so it was like my ticket. I wasn't looking at college as like, oh, I have this dream that I'm trying to pursue. I was just like, I'm trying to get the fuck out of the hood. And so I was like, look, I can buckle down. I can get good grades. I can get financial aid. Like that was my ticket out. And so I went to UC San Diego. And, the whole time though, to be honest, like when I say it's the safe route, there's a lot of societal and cultural and even parental programming that it's like, well, that's what you're supposed to do with your life. We're put into a system when we're 5 years old that teaches us like, hey, sit down in this chair, raise your hand when you need to talk, do these exercises. Like if you're good, you're rewarded. You get an A, you're considered, smart. And if you fail, then you get an F, you're considered a failure. And you know what I mean? It's like, it's a system. It's like a matrix that we're put in. And, we're very programmed to go to college. I think a lot of that is changing. I think it's cool because we live in a very, this next generation, I think that's coming up, are learning that, like, hey, like, I don't know, that system is kind of becoming outdated. There's a lot of other options that are presenting themselves. But at least for me, I was like, yo, this is what I need to do to, kind of be successful. And it's an important part of my story because really on my heart, at my calling at that time was like to be an artist. It was like, that's all I cared about. That's what I loved. And I was fucking good. And it was like, if I kept going with it,
Sure.
And I had a lot of regret around that for a long time. I think this is an important thing to also recognize too, is like, I abandoned that dream and I had a lot of regret. I was like, man, like, what if I had done it? What if I had, chased that dream and followed my heart? If only I knew what I know now. But it all kind of came full circle where it's like, now what I'm doing is like, that was an essential part of my story. I had to abandon my dream. I had to go and kind of be lost for a while. I was super lost when I was in college. I was just getting drunk every day, like didn't give a fuck about any classes. It was like, it was a hard time. I hadn't found my calling and my purpose. But, years later, it all makes sense where it was like, now I'm a guide for others to not abandon their dreams. Right. Because a lot of people as an artist, you don't have a lot of guidance. It's like, there's not a clear roadmap for how to navigate that journey. And and it can be very isolating. It can be very, very hard. So, I ended up going down the sports path instead. In college, I played rugby and I was like, really got into sports, and I had a coach, I had systems, I had practice, I had structure, I had like, there was really was introduced to coaching. And so now it's a big part of like why I do what I do. I'm like, hey, I'm taking all these things that I learned of what it took to become an all-American athlete and having that kind of support and that kind of structure, and then bringing that to the world of artists where there's a lot of artists that are ready to abandon their dreams because they don't have the guidance, or they're questioning, can I really do this? Do I really want to do this? Right. So it's, a lot of times it's, we're in these moments of sort of being lost and it not making sense. But I think just like trusting that it's all happening for a reason.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to explain that trajectory because, you look back, you're happy where you are now. We're going to talk about how you got to where you are, but you have to go through those moments. And I'm glad you said that because like you pick up every skill set and you understand why the redirection happened later. But when you're going through it, you might feel lost or like, why is this happening to me? Or like all of those feelings, but it all ends up making sense in some crazy way. So it's cool to hear like how those experiences kind of like shaped you anyway. And you found your way into music coming out of college as well. So can you talk a little bit about your first role? Because you're already in California, so you were working at Capitol Records out of school, correct?
Yeah. Well, right out of college, I had taken a financial advising job, and it was like I graduated college on Saturday. I moved in with a girlfriend on Sunday. I started a financial advising job on Monday. I was like, all right, welcome to the real world. Like it's game time. Let's go. Yep. And like 2 months in, I just had this massive epiphany where I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I don't like this. I don't want to do this. I had a friend who she had been signed up for to go to law school and just like literally just got up in the middle of class one day and just left and quit. And I was like,
oh my God.
I was like, and it just like, literally it hit me like a lightning bolt. I was like, fuck this. Like, I don't have to do this, especially now, 22 right out of college. It's like, fuck it. I literally just walked right into the office, like on the spot. I was just like, yo, I don't want to do this. I'm not into it. And the seed had been planted where it was like my friend's dad had pointed out. He's like, hey man, look, you love music, you're passionate about music, and you also have this business degree. Why don't you put those two things together and work in the music business? I was like, oh shit, that's a great idea. So I literally I quit that job. My best friend had recently moved to LA, and I was like, bro, I'm coming. I'm right behind you. And so I moved to LA with literally with $1,000 and like a skateboard and a duffel bag and one friend, and that was it. Yep. But I don't know how to explain it. I just had faith. I had like blind faith. And I didn't know what that word really meant at that time. I thought that was always like a religious thing, having faith, but it was just this total utmost belief that like things are going to work out. And it wasn't a straight line. Right after moving to LA, I like 2 months after moving there, I broke my leg playing in a rugby game. Had to get surgery, like completely destroyed my leg. It was like the universe was like, oh yeah, you want this dream. And this is a huge thing too, is like when you say you want it, okay, the universe is going to test you. How badly do you really want it? Are you actually about it? Right? It's going to throw some shit at you. And so that was I think one of my first tests. But once I had like 3 months where I couldn't walk, but as soon as I got back, as soon as I could walk, I was like, fuck this. Like I'm getting after it. And just kind of weaseled my way, like just through networking, just kind of like met the right people. And, just ended up getting a job at Capitol Records. So that story real quick, I'll share that, like for anybody that's thinking about like, how do I break into the music industry? One, I put myself, like I had no skills. I didn't have like a, crazy resume, and that's like a hard place. A lot of people are like, I want to break in, but I don't have the skill set yet,
Sure.
So like one, I would say like just intern somewhere, like, and you don't even have to necessarily live in LA, like intern somewhere, ask somebody like, hey, how can I help, get social media skills, like whatever you can possibly help somebody with. There's so many different ways. I had kind of like interned a little bit and had like a little bit on my resume, but basically I put myself in the middle of LA, which was just a great place to be. But not only that, there was a day where I had a friend, one other friend I had in LA. She worked for a PR company, and they were putting on a big press conference. And it was like they were announcing the nominees for the Latin Grammy Awards. And she was like, hey, if you want to come and volunteer, I can get you in the room, and the room is going to be full of music industry people. And I was like, that's all I need to know. Like, Perfect. Just get me in the fucking room and I will work it. Right. And so I showed up at 5 a.m, helped them set up chairs and just did bitch work. But all of a sudden I was in the room, and somebody pointed out a woman in the middle of this, press conference. They're like, oh, hey, that lady is like, she's like a big deal at Capitol Records. She's like the main executive over there.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, cool. That's all I need to know. And literally on the spot, I just fucking beelined it across the room. I walked up to this lady. I said, hey, my name's Nick. I heard you work at Capitol Records. Like, I'm trying to find a job in the music industry. If you guys have anything available open, like I would love to, put my name in the hat and talk about the universe. Like, her assistant had just put in her 2 weeks. Had just decided that she was quitting. And all of a sudden this kid walks up, and when she hired me, she was like, I just like that you had balls. You had balls to walk up to me.
Exactly.
So
100%.
There's something about like, you gotta create your opportunities. And so that got my foot in the door. Next thing I know, she's the woman that like signed and discovered and created Katy Perry. So next thing I know, I'm working with like A-list artists, with Katy Perry, Snoop Dogg, Coldplay, Alice in Chains, like fucking 30 Seconds to Mars. We signed David Guetta, Swedish House Mafia. That's how I got into the whole EDM scene. So, I went from, being on a couch with a broken leg and like in debt to all of a sudden having my own office at Capitol Records,
Jeez, there were so many good like nuggets in there I want to point out too, because like it may just be natural to you, or like you said, you had some instincts that came through that maybe other people don't, or like you have to build up to. But one, like when you broke your leg and just kind of having the blind faith that it's going to work out, and you're not going to let that deter you. Like that's like one little thing where a lot of people might be completely thrown off their game or give up. So that's an amazing nugget. And then approaching someone, I could not agree. I had a very similar situation happen in college. Where I debated, like there was a workshop, and one of the head like editors came from 17 magazine, and I wanted to work in magazines in New York City. That was like my dream. And at the end I was like, should I go up to her? Should I not? Like the easier thing would just be like email her after and leave. And then something in me was like, no, go up and fucking introduce yourself. And I did. And I ended up interning for 17 for a year after that, and ended up working in the magazine industry. And it's the same thing. Like you got to take a chance and say something.
Shoot your shot. Shoot your damn shot in any area of life, right? Like, there's some, hot person you want to take on a date. Go shoot your fucking shot, right? Worst thing that happens is they say no. You're in the same position that you were before. You got to get over that fear of rejection. I recently had a client. We hadn't even started working. This was just on our intro call. Sure. And she was a vocalist, and she was saying how, she wanted to collaborate with more people or whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. Like who do you want to collaborate with? Who's on your list? And I was like, hit up 40 people in the next week and get back to me. Just shoot your shot with 40 people. And next thing you know, she hits me back like a day later. She's like, oh my God, you'd never believe it. I hit up so-and-so big ass, like big artist, like dream artist. And he got back to me and like wants to work on something.
Wow.
And I was like, yo, that was sitting there the whole time.
Yeah.
It was just
exactly.
you weren't going out and grabbing it. The opportunities are there. The abundance is there. The relationships are there. All of it's there. You got to reach out and grab it though.
That's amazing. Yeah, this is so great so far. I couldn't agree with you more though. I mean, I've had similar situations with the podcast, like being nervous or not thinking you're big enough or that people won't, and it's not like it's easy. That's not the right thing, but if it's the right time or it's the right person, like I was surprised at people that got back to me as well that, you know, were incredible interviews. So yeah, you really never know, which is awesome to hear. Okay, so you've had a lot of experience working with artists, like especially with what you're doing now, but you know, you mentioned a couple artists that you guys were signing at Capitol Records. So what was it about working with artists that you enjoyed? And like, when did the idea of possibly being like a mentor or something like that kind of come into play?
So it's funny. It actually wasn't artists at first. I realized this when I was working at Capitol Records. On the same day, we had like, you know, Katy Perry had just got her next #1, you know, gold record, Billboard hit, whatever it was. And it was like, okay, cool. That brought me no joy. But there was a coworker that was having a really bad day and was really, really, really struggling with her boss, and came up to me and was like, you know, I need some support. Right. Like, and I was like, hey, come into my boss's office. Let's shut the door and let's talk about it. And in like, you know, a half-hour conversation, she went from being like ready to jump off the fucking building to walking out of there just feeling like fucking inspired, feeling in her power, totally in her strength. And I was like, and something clicked. I'm like, that's what lights me up. Right. That's what lights me up. And I didn't realize it was a gift per se, but at that time I had really gotten into just reading like personal development books. I bought like a $300 Tony Robbins CD program, and I'm dating myself. Like I still had a CD player in my car, and I was just driving around LA listening to Tony Robbins CDs. I was just like eating it up because in my 4 years of college, I hated everything I learned. I was like, you couldn't get me to pick up a fucking book. I hated everything about school. But then it's right when I was graduating, I read a book that really changed my life called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it was the first time I read something. I'm like, oh my God, this actually, like, I like this. This actually helps me. And this actually is benefiting me. And so I just totally became like a self-help junkie and naturally found myself teaching that stuff to people. So it was more just like, yeah, friends and coworkers. I was like the life coach for like the Capitol Records, like assistants, you know, back then.
Wow.
But then eventually, you know, really so then I started managing. When I left Capitol, I became a manager and I started managing DJs. I was like, I want to work in the DJ scene. I totally caught the EDM bug. I'd gone to my first rave, you know, we totally became a raver, and I was like, this is the shit I want to do. And so I became a manager. But then even in the management, when I was a manager, it was help. It wasn't necessarily like, you know, we had to do the branding and the marketing and help, you know, getting signed to record labels and going to shows and all that stuff. But then there were the deep conversations about how the artist was struggling and doubting themselves and maybe having a bad day, or is the late night conversation about life and spirituality after the show. And I was like, that's the same thing. I was like, that's the shit. That's the shit that lights me up. That's the stuff that I also think I'm really good at. So it was through being a manager for 4 or 5 years that then I realized, I'm like, you know what, this is the part of managing that I actually really like. You know, I don't really love helping with marketing campaigns and all that shit. And there's a lot of people that are much better at that stuff, but like, you want to feel inspired, and you want to like, you know, have your head screwed on straight like that. Cause if that's not there, none of the other shit matters. You're not going to make good music. You're not going to build a good brand. You're not going to build a good audience. You know, like you got to have your head screwed on straight. You got to be, you know, inspired. It's like navigating that human side. That's hard, that we all deal with. You know what I mean?
See, this is what I love about getting older because like you don't know what you don't know. And as you moved on, like you're learning new skills, you're figuring out what you like and what you don't like. And I felt like that was always so helpful when it came to jobs, was like figuring out what I didn't and didn't want to do, so that you get like more and more focused and narrowed like as you get older, which is like something that I embrace now, and I get excited for like, okay, like how much more fucking focused will I be at 50 compared to like 33? And you were just starting to like hone in on what your specialty and what your gift was going to be through all those experiences.
And a lot of it is combining the things that you like, right? Like for me, it was like, wasn't necessarily what I like, but it was like I had the business degree and I was passionate about music. So that was just the starting point. Like, okay, let's put those two things together. The music business. Awesome. I had no idea what I wanted to do within the music business, right? But then going further, it was like, oh, my two passions really were like music and then personal development was the other thing.
Right.
It was like, okay, well, let's put those things together. How do we combine music and personal development? And that's where this sort of like life coaching thing came from. So It's just like, what's the shit you like? Put them together and there's probably a lane for it.
Yeah, or you create a lane as well, which is really, really cool to see. But I want to talk about Icon because when we spoke a little bit, I could tell like how much that, imprinted on your life and how much that chapter like meant to you. And also just like hearing from artists in the scene, like they know you so well and you worked with so many people. And even the role like industry advisor, was that your title the entire time you were at Icon?
No, I created that. Talk about creating. Like I created that lane. Okay. When I met I'll give another example of combining, so Icon Collective, first off, if any artist out there that's listening is like considering like really, really wanting to do this, wanting to take this seriously, I can't recommend Icon enough. It was a massive part of my life. It's an incredible program. I mean, it's times 10 the best in the biz, because it's so much more than just a school. It's a community. It is it's a personal development program. It's life changing. I remember my favorite description of it was James from Far East Movement called it the X-Men school for producers. Right. It's just a bunch of little superheroes, but
that's awesome.
When I started at Icon, I was a manager and, was like full-time managing artists. And then, and at that time though, I was getting burnt out on like, it was like, it was a lot of babysitting. It was like, we were just managing these kind of like wild party animal, like drunk DJs. It was like, there was just a whole party scene. And for me, I've always been more connected with like the artistry of like the music making side of it. And so I wasn't loving managing and kind of where I was. And literally like, this is when I started really learning about manifestation. I was like, I want to find people that are more kind of higher consciousness, that are not so much about the party scene, but they're more about the art. And like I love this scene. Like I love the electronic music scene to a certain extent, but like the whole partying thing just for me at the time wasn't where I was at. And I kind of just literally just put that thought out into the universe. And like 2 weeks later, I got introduced to the owners of Icon and ended up checking them out, going down. And they were like, they were teaching a class on like meditation and shit. I was like, what? I'm like, what the fuck is this place? I'm like, this is dope. And so they invited me originally. We're like, hey, you want to come teach a music business class? And they're like, you're a manager. They're like, this shit better than we do. Like we're teaching music business. It was more like a artist school for artists at that time. And so they brought me in to be the business guy. And I mean, from the very first day, I getting up in front of a class and just teaching that 1 hour a week, that lit me up. Again, it was the same thing. I'm like, this is my shit. I'm like, yes, this, like, it totally, I didn't know I was a teacher. It woke up a part of me that was a teacher. So that's where it started. Just started off teaching 1 hour a week. But then next thing I know, I took over the whole music business program, like rewrote their entire curriculum. So for long, and then they offered me a full-time job. Eventually they were like, hey, like we could use your help here, if you want to do marketing for the school and whatnot. So I went full-time with them while I was managing my own artist clients. Cool. But then really what we saw, I was like, hey, like as a manager, I had all of these contacts. I knew all these artists, all these labels. So I just naturally started helping the students. Like, oh, you trying to get signed to this label? I know the guy over there. Let me make that introduction. Right. I kind of started acting as a manager for the entire like school and the roster, So I introduced a lot of guys to their managers and help them get their careers started. So that's where, I kind of created the title of industry advisor. So I basically became like the face of the school for anything industry related, anything that we were doing to kind of, bridge the gap between the collective and the music industry.
For sure.
Yeah.
And when you talk about like coach, like how many kids were in a class at the time that you were teaching?
I mean, when I started, we were small when we started. I caught Icon, I started there in like 2012. So we were still it was a tiny operation
compared to what it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, it was in this, small location. I think there were like up to 8 students in a class would be the most. I mean, now, since then they've moved to 2 different locations. It's like 10 times the size of what it was. It totally blew up during that time. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I'm just trying to like picture it, because it's like still a nice, and it goes from having your one-on-ones at Capitol, just like supporting a coworker, to teaching a small like intimate classroom, to now doing like what you're doing one-on-one with artists as well. But I want to talk about the Art of Flow class as well, because I know that was kind of like leads us into the coaching. But why was that a game changer?
Yeah, so I was the business guy for a long time. It was like Nick's the business guy. He's teaching the music business classes, and then the owner was teaching. He was teaching Art of Flow, and then he wanted to kind of like just like not have to be required to come in all the time. Basically, he was ready to pass the torch, and so I was the first person that he asked to start teaching that class. And so the Art of Flow, basically I describe it as, it's a class about creativity, but it's really taught through the lens and the intersection of spirituality, psychology, philosophy. We kind of bring all these different things to talk about this very enigmatic, if that's the right word, like idea of creativity. And but this is the thing, this is the secret sauce about Icon. This is why Jaws and Keizo and Sullivan King and Slander and Nightmare, like all these guys really blew up, because that class teaches you ultimately how to be original, how to not listen to what everybody else is doing and follow the trends. It really teaches you how to go within yourself and like find yourself as an artist, tap into your own sort of unique original thing, and have the courage to do that, so Icon's really big on like, like fuck the industry, fuck what everybody else is doing, like do you,
right.
And we've seen so much success from that. That's why Icon blew up, was because artists started like following that advice. And so for me also, I'm very spiritual, and that class, like I really leaned into I'd say the spiritual side of it. So like for me, it was massively transformational, because I was the business guy. And then personally, I just like over the course of like, a year or two, I became more of I was like the spiritual, like
guru,
the spiritual guru guy that people started coming to. So this is where, this is when I became, officially became a coach. I'd had that idea in the back of my head for 5 or 6 years. It was floating in the back of my mind of like, like I'd heard about this profession called life coaching, which now it's popular. Back then it wasn't popular at all. Coaching was not a popular thing. But I eventually had students coming up to me, and they're like, hey, like, will you be my mentor this quarter? And like, I'm not, I wasn't a mentor because I don't know how to produce music, but they're like, we want you to just mentor us on like the life stuff. And so that was like, awesome. That was the calling from the universe. I'm like, okay, I've been ignoring this calling, the call to adventure. I'd been ignoring this calling long enough. I can't deny it anymore. Like people are literally coming to me and asking me for this. And so that's where the whole coaching journey started. And I just did it there like part-time for the next 2 years. I went through and got went and did like a whole year long, official like life coaching certification program. Cool. And then, after 2 years of just kind of, it being the side hustle, it's been like 4 or 5 years now that's like been the full-time thing that I'm doing.
It's so cool. Yeah, it's so cool. I knew like once we connected, I was like, he's tapped in, like he gets it. And it's cool when you meet other people I'm curious when you became more spiritual. I know you were into personal development. But yeah, like I just got into that honestly during like COVID 2020. I was always like an intuitive person, but then I got into tarot reading and just like fully dove in kind of after that. So I would, it's only 4 years. It's still relatively new.
Yeah.
But when you meet other people who get it and who are also like tapped into that energy, I feel like it just like, it's super, I mean, even this is synergistic as fuck. So
honestly, before it was like my mid-20s that I started kind of finding my spiritual path, but what led me to that was the rave scene, right? Okay. I was just like a fucking drunk rugby player, jock sort of gym bro, that was like a metalhead. Like I had a very tough exterior shell, no vulnerability. Like I'd never had told my friends that I love them, and
Right.
then it was like all of a sudden I had this experience. I got introduced to the rave world and to the rave culture. And this is, when fucking Plur was very, very strong and very alive. And so next thing you know, we're going out every weekend. And, it was a good like year where like we went out, pretty regularly and really, at some point I was like, hey, I want to move from being in the crowd to really being in the business. And so I kind of left like the scene behind. But that was actually where it started for me. Was I started, all of a sudden, like I was really living with so much more of an open heart. Right. And it was just massively transformational. And so that was kind of the precursor to then I started, I know I was just, in my early mid 20s, like asking some of these bigger questions, like what's actually going on here? What's life really all about? And so it kind of started my spiritual path.
That's awesome. Yeah. It opened you up. I love that part of this community that it is like so tapped in. And I always feel this way. Like you might have like your friends you've known the longest who I love dearly, but there's something about my festival friends, if you want to call it, who are still my best friends now, but I've had more deep, intimate conversations and talked about every topic under the sun with them.
Yeah.
It's just a completely different connection that it's like hard to describe to people who are not in this scene like at all. But yeah, you connect with people on a different level in this scene, which is really cool.
And I hope that people find that, I think that there's usually one of two different ways that you find the rave scene. It's like either you really fall in love with the music and you come out to see your favorite artist, or you're just like, there's a cool party going on. And like, you come out to like find the party. And I think some people are still, there to party and kind of stuck in that, but there is such a deeper, really beautiful, like, energy underneath all of it that like, if you allow yourself to drop into that and tap into that. And I think it's inevitable. I think most people find that even if you're not expecting to, you might be just be like, I'm just coming out to party and like, see some of these cute girls in their rave outfits or whatever. But next thing you know, you're having those deep conversations. like,
exactly.
Like, that's it's like the Trojan horse. We're like, we got you, bro. We got you.
Yeah. It's so funny. Or for some people you move on and you might grow out of it. And it's like, not everyone's meant to stay. Like if you are, you'll know, I think.
Yeah. And but I feel like I'm just like kind of coming full circle because that's where it started for me. But then I got in the business and it was like, okay, now I'm a manager. And then it was all about, like just, icon and coaching and all this stuff. But there's a big part of me where I'm kind of like, all right, I'm like, I need to get back in the crowd, I need to still stay tapped into that. And I think I'm about to have my Rave phase 2.0 coming back.
Yeah. I love it, but it'll be good because it's like a different, coming from a different perspective and experience, which is a cool thing.
Just yesterday, my manifestation fucking powers have been off the hook lately. I've just been getting invited to so many cool things. My friend who's an artist just invited me to go to EDC, which I haven't been in a long time.
Say.
So I literally just booked my hotel. Haven't been to EDC in forever. So if anyone's out there, you all see me.
That's awesome.
Hit me up, say hi. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's like going home. It's such a big event for the year. So that's so fun. Yeah. Okay. So I'll see you out there. But okay, we gotta talk about this word mindset because I think this is kind of like tapped into everything that you do, and obviously you have your podcast as well, which I want to chat about. But when I say that word, what does that mean to you? Like, why are you deeply connected to that word?
Yeah. Well, I think when I think of that word, as soon as you said that, I also thought about programming, back to this idea of programming. It was like I had that programming of like, I need to go to college to be successful or whatever that was. And it's like our minds are like computers. They're just computer systems, right? And so they've been programmed since the day that we were born, right? They've been programmed by your parents, depending on what family you were born in, where you grew up, what city, what school you went to, what kind of, influences you were around. The media is programming us all the time. Like even right now, I am programming your mind. You are listening to these words, and these words are infiltrating your neurons and starting to make certain connections, right? And it's just like our mindset is so important because I think this is that just the first part of it is just recognizing like, hey, like we've been programmed a certain way, and is that way helping me? Like, is this way that I've been programmed really bringing me the life that I want, right? And if it's not, then we can reprogram ourselves. Like let the reprogramming begin, you know? And so for me, you know, specifically, like, especially when it comes to working with artists, you know, I have a sort of a simple framework that I follow, which is that, you know, there's really 5 main things that we have to like focus on to be a really good artist. You know, you have your music, you got to make great music, you got to have a great brand, you need to be good at marketing, you need to be good at networking. But the first one that's underneath all of it is mindset. And this comes from working with literally thousands of artists, you know, in my 15-year career, from A-list artists at Capitol Records to, you know, the thousands of artists that came and went through Icon, and now all of my clients and everything that I do. It's like there's a lot of people that go on to succeed, whether that's an artist or whether that's in any other area and industry. There's a lot of people that they go on to crush it, and then there's a lot also that don't. And I've had the privilege of seeing a lot of people that have, you know, kind of chased this dream. And I've always just questioned, like, what is it about the ones that have like done really well and the ones that have maybe, you know, failed in the process? And it's like, it's not just about the music and all this other shit. It's really the deeper stuff of like, where's your head at? Do you have the right mindset in the first place? Because if you don't have that right mindset, nothing else matters. It's step number 1.
Yeah. And I'm sure like getting that in place, like when you have artists come to you, and I know you've worked with people like of all different levels, what are some of like the common mindset issues that you see, if you had to like pick a couple that you're like almost every time that pops up?
Yeah. Well, the big one that I realized right away, once I started my podcast, after talking to just the first couple artists, I realized that a lot of artists don't treat they're great artists, but they don't see themselves as business owners. And so a lot of people are saying like, oh, I want to be successful at being an artist. Well, it's not actually just being successful at it as an artist. You need to run a successful business, and you need to embrace that truth. You know, the biggest complaint I think for a lot of artists is like, oh, like, I don't want to have to post on social media, and I don't want to have to like have to do all these things, and I should just be able to make music. And it's like, all right, well, that's just not the game. That's not the game. The game has certain rules. If you want to play the game, like you gotta build an audience. You got to get over that. You know, there's a lot of blocks around. I think just, you know, a lot of people just putting themselves out there in general. You know, it's scary to put yourself out there, whether that's on social media, whether that's like sharing your music with people too. So those are a few of the ones that I see. I think also just in general, like, just how dedicated and serious are you in the first place? You know, a lot of people say, I want this, but like, again, like, you gotta be about it. You gotta be all in. Like if you're half in, you're only going to get half the results, you know, like, there's literally nobody that's done it at like the level that I think most people want to do it at, that haven't been relentlessly dedicated to it. Right. And that's where, like, for me, like, it all really clicked when I kind of started comparing the world of like athletes and artists, and thinking about all the things that I had learned from being an athlete and kind of what that took to being an artist, where I'm like, yo, someone that wants to play EDC someday, that's the same thing as someone saying like, yo, I want to play in the NFL someday. Right. So like, think about how hard you have to work. Like, you got to show up and be relentlessly dedicated to your craft. You got to go to practice. You got to lift those weights. You got to show the fuck up. You got to really, really want it. And like, you know, a lot of people, they want it, but like, they don't really want it bad enough, or they're not willing to actually like fucking put in the work. Like, it's that's just the reality of it.
I liked the framework that you said, though, because when you put it like that, like, it can't just be the music. Like, in the world we live in right now, like, there's obviously other things you have to do to get yourself out there. But even like you mentioned networking being a part of like the industry, which like I know I've experienced that. For somebody who comes to you who might be on like the more introverted or shy side as well, like, what tips do you give them as far as like putting themselves out there, as far as like meeting people and building relationships?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, you know, if you are, first off, there is no one right way. And I need to really emphasize that, right? If you're looking for the right way to do it, if it's like, oh, like, well, I have to live in LA and go out every single weekend and meet people, and then like, but I'm introverted and I don't want to do that. It's like, okay, cool. You don't have to, you know? Everybody that's at the top of the game, everybody's got there in a different way. right? But the commonality is they've worked really fucking hard to get there. They've been all in. They've had that relentless mindset. So, if you are more introverted, cool, no problem. But like, then really master the skills of, you got to make great music. You got to build a really good brand. You got to get really good at marketing. You can do all of that from the comfort of your home. If you are, here's the thing is like, if you're making noise, if you are causing some buzz, creating some buzz for yourself, people are going to come to you.
Right.
You don't have to go to them. I can't tell you how many, kids in LA, they're out there networking and hustling every fucking weekend, but their music sucks and their brand sucks and they don't have an audience. So it's like, you can know everybody, you can know all the promoters, you can know all the labels, but if you don't have the product's always going to be the most important, So it's when you have all of it that you really, can hit a home run. And also, it's like, that's what a manager's for. Your manager is there to network for you. So if you have, there's a lot of artists that, they're not the one out there. Like in the beginning, you got to do a little bit of that work, but like ultimately, like you have a team. And so, your manager should be the one out there really shaking hands too.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, that's good tips. Cause like you said, like there isn't one size fits all for everybody. And I'm sure you see a lot of things. And even for somebody listening who isn't an artist, but I'm, getting a ton of value out of this because this applies to so many different things. Was there a session recently that, stood out to you, or a lesson you feel like came out of it that would be good for like anyone to hear or relate to?
Yeah, literally today. And this has been a good theme with this particular client, but literally today, one of my clients hit me up and she was like, "Hey, like I have this opportunity to do these shows, but like it just doesn't, like something in my gut doesn't really feel good about it." And she's like, "I already know what you're gonna say," and so I just hit her back. I was like, "Is it a fuck yeah?" She's like, "No." I was like, "Okay, then Right. And so I think that's a huge lesson for all of us is like, if it's not a fuck yeah, it's a no. If it doesn't feel good, like your body knows, like, what does it feel like inside of you? Have that connection to your gut, have that connection to your inner world. It's like, if it's not lighting you up, if it doesn't excite you, if it feels off, going, whether it's dating somebody, you're like, oh, this person, like, I don't know why. Logically, everything seems fine about them. They're great on paper, but just something feels weird. Listen to that feeling. If it's not a fuck yeah, then it's a no.
Right. I love that. I apply that to my life in so many different scenarios. So you have no idea how much that hits home for me personally.
Yeah.
But no, this is a great like attitude to apply to literally everything that you guys are doing. And we're wrapping up here, you guys. But I want to talk a little bit about where you are now in your life. Like, you're doing these amazing things. You're working with so many cool people. We've had this long career to get to this point. But I was listening to one of your podcasts. I think it was your last one that came out, but you were talking a little bit just about, I think it was just about like getting older and also like where you are at your life now. And I was just curious, like, is this where you expected to be? And if not, just based on like your age and stuff, like for people who have these timelines of in their head of like, I need to be successful by this age, or I need to be married by this age, or like they have like those false timelines set for themselves. Like, what would you say to that?
Yeah. I think, again, there's no right path for anybody, right? Let go of the template. Be open to, what your life is going to look like. It might not look like the next person, because this, again, back to the programming. It's all programming. Like, I'm supposed to be at this point in my life, I'm supposed to own a home, I'm supposed to be married, I'm supposed to have this much money, I'm supposed to be this far along in my career, I'm supposed to whatever. It's like, okay, supposed to says who?
Jeez,
right?
Sorry. Holly, come here.
Yeah, so supposed to says who. That's, I think, been for sure one of my biggest lessons. And again, this is just the way I live my life, right? I follow my intuition. I'm making shit up along the way. I don't have a template. I'm not going to say I don't have a vision, but like a lot of it has just been figuring it out along the way. Did I ever think like that I would be a life coach for DJs? Was that the plan? Like, no, this is just where my intuition led me. This is where the universe led me. And I'm just following the breadcrumbs. Am I going to do this for the rest of my life? I don't know. The thing is, I'm open. Maybe I do this and it's like, if you don't walk through that door, you don't know what's on the other side of it. Like, I'm just doing this right now, and there might be something else. I know there will be something else after this. I don't know what it is. I have no idea, because the future is unwritten. There's an infinite possibility, right? But it was like, I had to be that financial advisor for 2 months to realize that wasn't it, to then become the assistant at Capital, to then figure out that I wanted to be a manager, to then, it's like, it's just this series of events that you just got to keep following it. And I think if you follow it with courage, that's the thing, is like, you're either making decisions from one of two places. You're making it from fear, or you're making it from love. You're making it from excitement and inspiration and ultimately courage. I think a lot of people are making their decisions from fear, right? It's like, I went to, maybe I'm going to college because like I'm scared, or I'm choosing this because it's the safe thing to do. I'm scared that if I actually chase my dream, things might not work out. But if you don't actually chase that dream, you're never going to learn what you're really made of. You're never going to learn what's on the other side of that, and who you're going to become in the process. That's the biggest thing I've taken away from any of this, is who I am. All of this can be taken away from me, but you can't take away who I am. You can't take away my mindset and my heart and my character. And none of that would have been possible if I didn't go through all of this and forge that mindset and that character through this wild fucking journey that I've been on.
Yeah. That didn't fire you guys up. I don't know what the fuck will. Like, honestly, this is why I loved it. And I'm sure you get the same feeling from working with your clients, just like feeling fired up after it. That's how I feel from doing this podcast and just talking to people. It's so interesting to hear these lessons. And I think this can be applied to so many people. So I feel like that definitely like hit home for a lot of people. And we want to encourage you to take those chances and to start listening to those inner feelings and not, ignoring those nudges. And I love the ability, or I guess I love the openness of the future as well, because I think like bringing it back, I always was like, I want to be a creative director of a magazine. That was like my dream. And like, even now when people are like, what do you want to do when you're like next? I'm like, I couldn't even tell you a job title, couldn't tell you what I would be doing, because this has been my job was literally created at Beatbox. Like, so many things were just created and organically happened. So I'm like, I literally could not tell you in 5 years where I'll be.
I love that idea. It's like, sometimes like the universe has bigger plans for you than you do. I might think I want this thing, or I'm going to be this thing. And it's like, that might actually be so small compared to what the universe wants for you and what's possible for you. So having at least some level of openness to see where things go.
Love it. Yeah. And just like a huge message of just staying committed to your vision as well. But yeah, it's been so cool to follow you. Where can people connect with you? Where can they find the podcast, everything, if they want more tips and advice from you?
Yeah, definitely listen to the Headliner Mindset podcast. We put out episodes every Monday. And so you can find that on all platforms, Spotify, YouTube, whatever it is that you listen to. And then, personally, Instagram is usually where I'm spending most of my time. Best place to connect with me, just Instagram. Just at Nik Cherwink, and would love to connect with you. If any of this resonated, definitely like reach out. I'm very accessible, especially any artists that are out there. Always just love supporting people on their journey. So thank you so much for having me, Emma. This is rad. I'm excited for everybody to listen to the episode that we did together on the Headliner Mindset as well. But just so stoked to see like what you're up to and how you're adding value to this really special community. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, guys, I'm going to link everything down below. Go show love and support. Say hi to Nik at EDC if you see him walking around.
Say what's up.
It's going to be awesome. And again, you can connect with us at Rave Culture Cast on all the platforms. Watch us on YouTube if you guys want. Rate, review, subscribe, do all the things. And I'll see you at a show or on the next episode very soon. Bye, guys.